Alrighty, I think we're getting ready to get started here. Once again, my name is Eric Larson, Director of Marketing with Vidcie. Thank you very much for joining us today as we talk a little bit about Vidcie InSight, mobile safety solutions for transit. I know that I met a few of you folks at the recent APTA annual meeting, so hello again to you. For the folks we haven't met, nice to meet you. And what I'm going to try and do today is try and keep this a little short and sweet. We'll talk a little bit about what the Vidcie InSight solution is. We'll discuss some of the goals that we see in the transit organizations out there as far as rider safety and happiness are concerned. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we think the Vidcie InSight solution solves a few of the issues that are posed by the If You See Something, Say Something campaign. Then I'll finish up with a demo of Vidcie InSight to give you an idea of what the solution has to offer. Throughout the webinar here, I'm going to try, like I said, try and keep things short and sweet for you so that we can really focus on the demo section. Please feel free to type questions in the questions tab throughout the presentation. I can stop and take these as they come. And of course, we will absolutely be available for questions at the end. So we can take them as you go, or we can hold them off till the end. Whatever's good for you is good for me. Let me just switch over here and should be good to go. Just a quick backgrounder about Vidcie. We started off in 2010, and we were really focused on the consumer space, creating and marketing a line of head-worn, body-worn, hat-mounted portable cameras for the consumer. One of the things that we did that made us unique in the market at the time was being able to allow people to stream over typical unreliable cellular networks directly from these devices so they could share their video with friends and family in real time. That became one of our core competencies that we've been able to continue to develop in the past 5 years. At the same time that we were doing that, we were doing a lot of work with some of the three-letter agencies you'll see on to the right, and we did some work with the folks over at Incontel as well, which is the investment arm of the CIA. So we've been working with the security folks for quite some time, and even so far as a lot of the TASER body cams that you see out there are actually built using Vidcie technology for the core of their hardware. So even when we were focused in the consumer space, we actually had a very strong foothold in the security space from the highest levels of the government on down. A few years ago, we decided to take a shift where we were really going to highlight our ability to stream real-time video over cellular networks, and we took that into the enterprise space. What we're doing right now is quite happy to be focusing specifically on security for enterprise with a strong focus in the transit arena. And we've got what we think is a complete solution to allow for enhanced rider safety pretty much every step of the direction. So let me talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges that we see out there for transit authorities. A lot of this comes from the conversations we had at the recent APTA meeting, but quite frankly, I won't read these all to you word for word because it's right there on the screen, but everybody out there is looking to increase and retain ridership. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're continuing to keep the trains full of people who are getting where they need to go. More importantly, though, people are trying to figure out how can they add to those discretionary riders that they're losing right now to Uber, to self-driving, to whatever it happens to be. How can you make sure that incidents that occur out there are coming into your security operations center? How can you make sure that you find out about these issues early enough? And how can you make sure that people have a fantastic customer experience? So we see two pieces to the puzzle here. We see one is the obvious safety issue that we're concerned with, allowing people to report issues in incidents in real time. But you also have the lack of comfort that you see with, let's just even take tourists to the Bay Area. We have a lot of people here who come to the Bay Area to see the bridge and to see the zoo and to see the mountains and the trees up in the Muir Woods. But a lot of these folks don't have the confidence to hop on a bus or hop on a train because they simply don't know how the systems all work together. They see them as very disparate systems, and they're not comfortable enough right now just to hop on because they're afraid they're not going to get where they really want to go. So what we're finding out is a lot of these people would love to be able to use a trip planner app, but a lot of these trip planner apps are coming from third parties that are not necessarily trusted or well marketed. Those trip planner apps don't allow them to get notified of possible delays or station changes. They don't really see the schedules all in the same place. They don't have the ability to understand how the trains are connected to the buses. They don't understand what the fares are. And what they see is a situation where there are multiple apps happening simultaneously. They don't want to take the time to learn them, and at the end of the day, they become uncomfortable with the whole situation, so quite frankly, they don't take public transit. And that's an issue that we see especially here in the Bay Area, and I'm sure you see that in large cities throughout the country. The way that we see this changing, and I think we heard a lot of this at APTA, is that a lot of the organizations out there like yourselves really need to move to the point where there is a singular app which is published, distributed, and marketed directly by you guys. I know there are people out there, and a lot of the trans organizations that we talk to do have pages on their websites where they have links to apps, so you can get the scheduling app, you can get the trip planner app. They have apps for being able to report crime or safety issues. But they're all different apps. They have a completely different look and feel from each other, completely different interface. And while they may be nodded to perhaps by the organizations, they're not fully endorsed, and people don't have the confidence they are coming from the organizations themselves. So a trend that we're seeing is that each of the transit organizations is really going through and beginning to consolidate all of these functions into a singular app that you guys would be creating and publishing. That's absolutely something that we would agree with from a user standpoint, and our goal is to make sure that Vidcie is a part of this overall solution. So if I take just a moment to talk about the safety aspect, one of the things that we find fascinating is looking at the awareness versus the adoption of the "if you see something, say something" campaign. And this campaign is about 14 years old and has received incredible awareness out there. It's fascinating that no matter when you go to a bus station, a train station, or an airport, virtually everybody you speak to knows about this campaign. They have heard the phrase, and they basically understand what they're supposed to do. The scary part is not everybody understands exactly what phone number. I've mocked up a phone number for this image, but as you go from airport to airport, quite often they have different phone numbers, or they have a specific website. And what ends up happening is people are bombarded with the campaign over and over, but they quite simply don't have the knowledge at their fingertips to understand that if they see something and they want to say something, how do they do it? And we see a very wide gulf between something that the average person would want to report and the compelling need to call 911. There are a lot of things in that, gee, this seems a little bit odd. That person's behaving a little strange. I don't know where this suitcase came from. There's a lot of those situations where if someone had the easy access to simply call and just kind of take a good Samaritan approach at providing these reports, they would, but these people don't feel it's important enough, or they don't feel they want to get involved enough to call 911 and get engaged. So our feeling is that we need to make it as easy as possible for people to respond to this campaign by allowing them to do basically what they've been trained to do by having a singular app. So imagine a world where every rider on every bus, every train out there has got access to their transit organization's app. And they use this again for scheduling. They use this for ticketing. They use this for awareness of schedule changes due to events or holidays. In addition, they have the ability to simply report an incident. So now they understand if they see something, they should say something. Now they know they're one button press away from doing it. Once again, we see something like this app mock-up you see here where the reported incident is right up on top there. Our feeling is that the Vidcie solution would effectively be integrated fully into this rider app. The end user would absolutely never know the name Vidcie, but it's simply a complete solution that we offer as basically a plug-in architecture to your existing app. So let me take just a few moments to give you an overview of what the Vidcie solution is. What you're seeing here is kind of a very high-level cartoony explanation of the Vidcie architecture. On the left-hand side, at the input side, you have the mobile app. This app will allow people to stream real-time live video, to send text messages or still photographs directly from their mobile device. They could connect via Wi-Fi or their standard cellular plan. Everything then goes to a cloud-based server that Vidcie maintains that we'll talk about in just a moment. And then in your operations center, your operators would be logging into a web browser-based viewer, which we call Vidcie Central. So basically for the riders out there, if they see somebody who's hassling somebody or causing problems, they don't have to worry about making a phone call where this person could overhear them calling the police and possibly take action. They can sit off to the side. They can very easily pick up their phone, send a quick note that says, look, some guy's bugging somebody. They don't even need to know where they are, because on Vidcie Central, whenever somebody fires up the app and then sends a message or sends a photo or starts streaming real-time video, they'll see a pin appear on the map that tells you someplace on this map someone is sending information. So if you've got somebody who knows they get on a specific station but they're on a moving train, it doesn't matter. They don't have to know where they are. The message itself carries with it real-time GPS data that lets you know exactly where that message came from. So it adds a lot of intelligence that you wouldn't typically have out there. So just before we move into the demo, let me kind of give you a before and after of a typical call coming into one of your dispatch centers with and without Vidcie. Taking this to, down to the very bottom level, something occurs out in the world, which is the incident. It could be a crime, it could be a safety concern, it could be an accident, it could be a equipment malfunction, could be anything. Someone sees this or experiences this and decides to pick up the phone and call the police, call your transit police, or call 911. Quite simply, the ringing of that phone is the alert. That's how you know that something is happening. An operator picks up that phone and engages in a conversation. Now, your operators are extraordinarily good at being able to divine the critical information from these people. The people they're talking to are not trained reporters. They don't know exactly what information to provide or how to provide it. They simply know there's something they want to communicate back to the operations center or to the police. Your operators are, of course, very well trained to understand which questions to ask and how to quickly retrieve the information that they need. This allows them to evaluate the situation, decide which course of action to take, and to act. As you can imagine, the end goal is being able to get the amount of information you need to make the right decision as fast as possible. The downside here is if you've got someone in your dispatch center who's on the phone, that person can speak to one person at a time. So they're single-threaded inputs of information. You do have people, as I said, on the far end of the phone who are not trained reporters. They know what they saw, they know what happened to them, but they're not going to be able to give you a clear picture of the scale or scope of an incident. And obviously, if you're talking to someone, you're talking to someone who either likes the police or doesn't like the police. Someone who's scared or angry or basically just upset because their train was delayed. Everything that you're hearing from these people that you're talking to is filtered through their experience and their personality and, quite frankly, their mood. Another interesting side note is that while these calls are coming in, you can rest assured that there are a huge number of people out there who are already tweeting the information or posting to Facebook. So for every one person who calls the police to report something, there's a handful of people who are simply broadcasting that to the world, and that could potentially be valuable information to give you better situational awareness, but right now you're simply not taking advantage of that. If we're able to bring Vidcie into the equation, the flowchart changes just a little bit. Something happens in the world, and now what's happening is because you're not requiring people to make a phone call and engage in a specific one-on-one conversation, you have a lower barrier to entry. You have a lot more people who are more comfortable sending a text to the world than they are engaging in a phone call. So by the nature of you're allowing people to send information via text or video, you're going to get a higher number of incident reports. So you will have greater awareness of things that are happening in the world. You are also going to be able to get these reports containing live video and or photos and or text. So you're getting a much broader picture of what's happening, quite literally. You're also getting much more objective data. So you're getting some data which is absolutely going to be colored through the personality of the people you're talking to, but the photos and the videos are not going to be. So you're going to get a lot more actual information to see what's happening out there. This information does have the ability to send alerts through Vidcie Central, though you can also see what's happening in real time. And this all runs parallel to your existing incoming phone system. So right now with Vidcie, we absolutely don't see this as a replacement for any one of your emergency or 911 systems. Quite honestly, we see this as an augmentation where it can sit next to it. You have the ability to now bring in multiple threads of information simultaneously. You're able to get real-time data from the sort. And what's interesting is that you're going to get a completely different perspective because you're not waiting for people to learn how to describe the incident. They can simply send you a photo of it. And also allows you a lot more context because you're going to understand exactly where all of these photos, text, and videos came from. And I'll show you exactly how the system works in just a moment. But our feeling is what this is really going to end up doing is it's going to provide some very, very powerful tools for your security systems. So if we look specifically to the benefits for your security teams, you will obviously get increased situational awareness. You will be much more aware of what's happening out there in the world, not only a higher number of incidents because you have more people who feel comfortable reporting, but you're going to get more rounded and more multidimensional coverage of those events, so you really have a better idea of what's happening out there. As far as the security coverage, imagine we all know that you've got hundreds of high-functioning fixed cameras out there, either cameras in the buses, on the trains, in the stations, in the bus stops. But right now, if you're using the Vidcie InSight solution, effectively every rider, every employee, every driver, anybody who's walking around with a smartphone in their pocket effectively becomes, I mean, they could become a camera. They could become an input device for text or photos. So your security coverage is virtually unlimited. Anywhere people can go, you now have coverage. Once again, you're getting this information in real time. This is not someone who witnesses something, has to think about it, and then get to a safe place before they can make a phone call and figure out how to describe what's going on. These people can send information directly from the scene. They can send a quick text or a photograph of something as it's happening. At the end of the day, the primary benefit is now the fact that your dispatch operators have much more information, they have much more multidimensional information, and they have much more objective information, so they can take a look at what's happening and they're able to make a more informed decision more quickly and more appropriately. At the end of the day, like I said, that's still what it's all about. It's all about being able to respond efficiently, effectively, and quickly. The last piece before I move into the demonstration and we stop for questions is just a quick overview of the benefits of the Vidcie architecture as we see it. And this really comes down to a lot of the financials. But if we look at the reporting piece in the beginning, with Vidcie, you're not looking at outfitting your entire staff with body-worn cameras. You're not looking at having your riders have to be sent or purchase a new piece of hardware. You're basically dealing with people who are taking the smartphones that they already have, the data plans they already have, and being able to simply augment those with a simple app so now they can participate in this campaign with you. The nice thing is the scalability is there already. If they have a smartphone, they're already ready for Vidcie InSight. The deployment of this is basically how fast can somebody download an app. Once your app's deployed, once it's fired up, it will automatically connect to your server. Those reports automatically come into your instance of Vidcie Central. So you're ready to go literally in minutes. As far as the mobility, we spoke about that. Anywhere that people go, the Vidcie InSight app can go. And as far as cost effectiveness, you're not dealing with outfitting people with new hardware. Same thing as we move to the cloud server, which is the invisible piece in between the front end on the smartphone and the back end on a computer with Vidcie Central. These are the servers that maintain all of the information and transmit it to whoever needs to view it. We're not suggesting that you guys outfit your organizations right now with new server farms. We're not suggesting you buy new PCs. There's no memory. There's nothing your IT team needs to purchase or configure. All that's happening and is covered through Vidcie, so there is absolutely no hardware or configuration costs on your end. The most difficult piece, quite frankly, is whether or not there's a specific firewall issue we need to know about. This can typically be answered very quickly, and setup typically takes 2 or 3 days or less. As far as the performance, again, this is something you don't have to staff up for. We maintain and watch everything on our end, and we have the ability to give you as much storage as you may need, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail afterwards as well. We come down to the viewing end. Quite lastly is the web-based browser viewing, which is Vidcie Central. Once again, we had the opportunity to decide if we wanted to have a specific piece of Vidcie Central hardware. We could have put effectively a laptop or a desktop computer that was locked to Vidcie Central, but there was really no need to. There's no need to have any unique hardware here. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for your staff to simply log in on any laptop, any desktop PC, and have access to Vidcie Central. You do have the ability for people to log in from anywhere in the world. You have full password protection at different levels, so you can decide who on your team has access to everything, who only has access to live information, who can access historic information, who can delete files, who can download files. You have complete controls over those. Again, it comes down to being cost effective and scalable, as well as being completely global. So these are some of the benefits of the Vidcie architecture from the top, and of course, any follow-up conversations, we can get you incredible detail on those pieces of the puzzle. What I'd like to do right now is move into a demonstration of Vidcie InSight in action. As I mentioned before, there are primarily two pieces that a person would touch. That's going to be the front end using a Vidcie powered app and the back end with Vidcie Central. Now, I will be using my smartphone here in the office to transmit text and some text and some video rather, to Vidcie Central, but you won't be able to see what's happening there. So let me give you a quick overview of what I will see on my phone as I'm going through this presentation. So imagine for a moment that I'm downloading the Max Transit app, which is just an all-in-one app that allows me to plan my trip, buy my tickets, pay for my parking, and of course report crime or safety issues. If I hit report an issue, I move to a screen that is basically the primary screen for reporting something, which is the Vidcie powered screen. Obviously, it doesn't need to say Vidcie security. It could be branded however you like. We can use whatever fonts you like. It could be whatever colors is appropriate for your brand, but this is just an example of what we have right now. Within this screen, I can say I want to either send a text message or I do want to send real-time video. If I simply hit the text message and tap where it says type a message, a secondary screen comes up which allows me to type whatever I like. I send that and those messages immediately appear in Vidcie Central back in the Operations Center along with a tag of where that message was sent from. If I hit the small camera icon just to the left of the text window, it'll go to a very standard viewfinder which allows me to stream video and then eventually take photos as well. This viewfinder will work in portrait or landscape mode. So it's very, very straightforward. Our goal is to keep this as simple and intuitive as possible. And quite frankly, we're borrowing as many cues as we can from the camera applications and the text applications that all of your writers are already used to. It does no one any good to try and design something that's unique in this response. We want to make sure that we're absolutely giving people things they're very, very comfortable with on a daily basis. So let me switch over to Vidcie Central, which I have live on the screen here. You guys, I believe you should be able to see that in just a few moments. And I just had a question come in. Bear with me for just a moment while I take a quick read, and I'll read that question to people. Yes, the question is basically, is it possible that people would not want to be seen texting and watching what's happening? They might be recognized as reporting witnesses. Do you have abbreviated messages? Yes, that's absolutely something that we can add. We definitely would like to speak with you one-on-one, but one of the things we could do is work with you guys for a specific list of things that you would want to report. And you may decide that you want to have, depending upon your location, would you want to have someone report a fire, a crime, a maintenance issue, an injury? Yeah, we definitely could do that. A follow-up question is, will the central office be able to know what direction a bus or train is going when they receive a message in case there are two vehicles in the same place going different directions? There are things we can do here. We have the ability to basically understand, as long as the app is open, we could ping it for ongoing direction and motion. So one thing we could do is, while we would typically not be tracking customers and riders throughout the day, for example, if they decide to stop at a Starbucks, we don't really care. But we could do something where if they send a text message, we could send a follow-up ping from their GPS location 15 or 20 seconds later. Then the difference in direction and distance between those 2 points would be able to show you that they have been moving. So yes, we could show you the place where that particular message generated and the fact that that person is in motion. So yes, that is definitely possible. What I'm going to do, if you can bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to make a note of this question because I want to make sure I'm speaking to our product manager as soon as I get out of this call. So thank you very much for those questions, and please keep them coming. If that answered it, hopefully that did. If not, please ping me and I can continue to go into more detail for you. So I'm going to move over to the map here. What you're seeing right now in Vidcie Central is basically a three-part interface. Along the top, we have our timeline, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail. We've got the primary map interface on the left, and over to the right, we have the feed. So a couple things we can do here. In the live monitoring timeline, on the right-hand side here, you are seeing now, and that line is always now. I do have the ability to scroll backwards in time, and if I go back, let's just say an hour, I can see that someone at 12:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time sent a text from this location. If I want to open this window even more and go back, say 10 hours, I can go in and I see that somebody up in the Livermore area sent some video earlier this morning and has sent text as well. So there's a couple of things that you can do here. This really comes down to how you guys like to work. Our recommendation is that you would typically keep this to an 8-hour window or the window of a typical shift. That way, when the operator comes down and logs into Vidcie Central, when they sit down in the morning, they have complete visibility into all reports that came in the prior shift. If they care, that gives them some idea of what may have happened and what's been coming in. As their day progresses, the whole time window moves with them, so at the end of their 8-hour shift, the screen only shows what happened during their 8-hour shift, and they're able to do a handoff to the next operator. That's kind of what we think is a basic usage model, but I could very easily move up and say, you know what, I only care what's happening in the last 5 minutes. So for my workflow, I could very easily keep my entire window of visibility to a 5-minute window. Please note that what's happening on the timeline, this time here shows me when something could have happened. This shows me in the map area where something was reported from, and then everything coming down the right-hand side tells me what came in. So these three windows are constantly connected. So I'll never be able to see something that happened 2 days ago unless I move my time window open. So it's just a matter of being able to decide what kind of visibility you want over time. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to zoom out on the map a little bit. I am now going to grab my smartphone and I'm going to fire up the Vidcie app. Once again, I'm using a Vidcie app right now, which is typically what perhaps your security teams would use. Once again, your writers would not use the Vidcie app. Your writers would use your app, which would have a powered by Vidcie component. What you saw right now is as I fired this up, you saw a blue pin appear, and there it goes in. Let me go here. And let me make sure I'm actually still connected here. I think I may have lost my connection. I think I went to the Wi-Fi instead. So let me just take a moment to log in here. I'm now making a connection. And in just a moment, you should see a blue pin with a black outline. What that's showing me is that I am currently online. We have a slightly different usage model we're showing here. This particular app is designed for your security teams to use. Once again, your writers would use an app that's designed by you for your writers. Your security teams may have a different behavior. So what this basically shows you, if I have the Vidcie app live, if I put it in the background so I can check Facebook, make a phone call, check email, the location that I'm in will continue to appear on the map. So for your security teams, if you're using it for writers and your security team members, you'll be able to look on the map and see where your team members are at all time, which is a nice little benefit. If I decide I want to report something, I could report right now. I'm presenting in a webinar. I'm not sure if this is really a crime, but we'll see how the webinar goes. And I hit send. I get a notice on my app that it's been delivered, and then right here you see I'm presenting a webinar. So the text will always show up at the top of the timeline, everything comes down, and then what's interesting here is if I simply mouse over that message, you'll notice that one of the pins on the map is bouncing up and down. That shows me exactly where that message came from. Conversely, if I go in here and I zoom in and I say, okay, there's a message here, which one is that? I mouse over, and on the right-hand side in the feed, you see one of them highlighted. So if you're in a situation where you're looking at 15, 20, or 100 different pieces of data coming in, you can very quickly decide, okay, that came from this person in this location. I can also go through, and I've been doing some testing today, so I am the only one who's reported in on this, but if I want to go through here and say, look, I only want to see video clips, what I've done is I've taken my timeline back to 12 hours. I can see all of the incoming reports in the past 12 hours in addition to where they came from. And now by going to the filters, I can simply say, you know what? I don't want to see live information. I don't want to see video. I only want to see the text messages. What's nice is a little indicator pops up here that says, hey buddy, don't forget, you're in a filtered mode. You might be missing something. So I can very easily go back and just turn those all live. If I'm getting multiple reports from multiple people, I absolutely have the ability to filter by a specific smartphone name or a specific phone number. So if I'm getting multiple reports from one writer, I can basically make sure that I'm seeing nothing but the reports from that single writer if I decide to. So that gives you an idea of how the information can come in and how it's presented on the screen. A few other pieces we have is the ability to create what we call geofences. So what these are is basically it allows me to create different corridors, but if I go into, let's just say, Levi Stadium, which is one of our local stadiums, I'll zoom out just a little bit, I'm able to put a fence or create any shaped polygon I want around that area. So one of the things I could do right now is I could set alerts and say, tell you what, around that stadium, if at any point I get 3 reports within 2 minutes of each other, within 100 yards of each other, I want to make sure that alarms go off and I get a text saying, hey buddy, you might want to look here. The assumption is that you will often have an operator who's watching the screen, but you may find out that you have very sensitive areas where if anything happens, you absolutely want to be notified in case you stepped away for a cup of coffee. Geofences will allow you to do exactly that. What you could also do is basically go into the filters in the feed and say, select a geofence. I go down to Levi Stadium. And now what will happen is if you're an operator and you're only responsible for Levi Stadium or a particular parking lot or a particular station, you have the ability to basically filter your view so you're only receiving input responses and reports from that physical area. So you do have the ability, so you can set up specific team members so they're filtering what they're seeing so they can focus, or you can have it so you have separate alerts coming in. So geofence is a very powerful feature, can be used for a variety of things. You also have the ability to toggle between live monitoring here on the top left and an activity history. So at any point, someone on your team could say, geez, I'm seeing information coming in on this 4th of July. I'd like to compare it with what happened last 4th of July. You could absolutely go back and you'd be able to see historical trends. You could go back in as if something happened in a particular station or in a particular parking lot, you would have the ability to effectively rewind time and see what happened for forensic data. And you have the ability to download data from our cloud server into your own archives if you decide to. Please note that that information is absolutely password protected so that you can decide who on your team has unlimited access to all those pieces and who on your team only has the ability to, for example, watch live video. So you definitely have the ability to control who's in, who's not, who has the ability to access data and or delete data, and you will have the ability to run reports so at the end of the week you can go through and report exactly what the activity was in your copy of Vidcie Central. So we went a little bit longer than the half hour I was kind of trying to keep for the presentation and the demonstration, but that ends my demonstration. I can definitely take as many questions as you like, and of course if there's any interest, if you have specific questions or you'd like to discuss integration of the app into your system or any specific details, please drop me a note. We can absolutely get in touch and schedule a more detailed personal presentation for you as well. So I'll hop on, I'll wait for a few moments, see if there's any few questions. If you have no questions, thank you very much for joining us. If you do have questions, I will hang out here. And I had one question that just came in. Someone's asking, how many people can log into the viewer at one time? From a Vidcie Central end, which is the web browser-based viewer, you do have the ability for virtually unlimited people to log in. There are some limits on how many people can be watching real-time video, but as far as people seeing motion on the map and seeing where the information is coming from, there are no limits to that. And I have a secondary question. This one is someone I think is looking to understand how they could use this for both their riders and their security teams. And the question is, can my riders and my own security teams use the same system, or would they need to create two accounts? For Vidcie Central and for the Vidcie InSight solution, it would basically be, the only deciding factor would be who's using the app and which app they're using. From a Vidcie Central and a Vidcie server perspective, there would be no difference. So basically, if you have your riders using the app that you've created for riders, and at the same time you have your security teams using the Vidcie security app, both of those people can feed into one instance of the server, and you'll see both of those teams of people simultaneously within Vidcie Central. So it's basically one overall account, and you'll be able to just visually identify who's part of your security team and who's a rider, and they'll behave a little bit differently. So what I'll do is I will mute my microphone for just a few moments. I'll wait for any additional questions. Once again, if there are no additional questions, thank you very much. We'll drop you a mail to thank you for attending and to ask you any follow-up questions, and we hope to see you folks at Secured Cities as well. Thank you very much.